Hello, everyone. How is it going? Today we have with us Adam Chronister from Enleaf. Hi, Adam. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Thank you for taking out time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the invite. Happy to talk shop. I know we're in kind of a weird time in the world right now, and so marketing and business in general is in the forefront of a lot of people's minds as the climate's certainly changed. So I appreciate the opportunity and the timing for sure.
Well, yeah. I think the viewers will have a lot to learn from you after they see this. But yeah, tough times. But we'll come to that as well. How you are, like holding the ship and handling your clients during these times. But before we actually dive deep into it, why don't you start by introducing yourself and what you do?
Certainly, yeah. So, as mentioned, my name is Adam Chronister. I'm the kind of lead operator for Enleaf. That's Enleaf.com. We're a digital marketing agency, kind of a full stack agency, focusing on everything from website development and design to search engine optimization and pay-per-click marketing. So everything in the realm of getting your business started to actually promoting it is really within the realm of what we focus on. We have a pretty broad customer base in very differing industries. We've done B2B, B2C, small to mid-size, all the way up to enterprise level clients. So we've done it all. I would say our sweet spot is probably the small to mid-size businesses, though. Those are the ones that we really kind of go after, help come alongside and really partner with them. So that's kind of our sweet spot if you look at it. So
Right, right. You also handle the digital marketing at StayAlfred. Uh, Tell us more
correct.
about the
Yep.
platform because what you do there sounds fun.
Yeah. So in addition to the agency side, I also oversee digital marketing for StayAlfred. Now, StayAlfred is in the hospitality space, so they operate vacation rental units all across the U.S., so the domestic U.S. So for the last 3+ years, I've overseen much of their digital marketing strategy as well, taking them from much smaller market share than they are now to pretty healthy growth. Much of that in the organic space. So,
Right,
so
right.
yeah. In addition to our clients, I would say one of the areas that we focus on is travel. It's not only a personal passion of mine, but yeah, being involved in businesses in that space has been very enjoyable, and they're one of a few clients that we've worked with throughout the years in the travel space. So
Right, right. I love traveling, and I think that is one thing which is, facing a major hit during these times.
yeah, it's that area market in general is definitely going through some challenging times, and so it's certainly one of the most hardest hit. So there's a lot of adaptation that businesses in that sector are really having to take a hold of. So
Right, right. You also started your career as a software developer, and then, from
correct.
development, you transitioned to digital marketing. How
Yeah.
was the transition, and how did it happen?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, my background is in software development. I, came out of school with an intent on doing software development. I learned really early on that I maybe wasn't. I don't know if I wasn't made for coding or just didn't have the interest I thought I would initially. I love everything still around the whole realm of development. Where I'm still pretty heavily involved with everything we do on the website front. But doing the day-to-day code, I realized quickly it wasn't something that I wanted to do long term. I would rather let other more senior developers focus on that. So at the time, out of college, I was working for an agency, started as a project manager, quickly jumped into the marketing aspect of their services or their industry because they really had no marketing representation. And this around this time, Twitter and other platforms were just starting to get wider adoption. So I went to my employer at the time, asked them if I could head up their marketing, and they said, well, no one else is doing it, so sure. And I've been doing it ever since, digital marketing in some realm or another. So that's kind of how I adapted. It really was just kind of a pull and an interest, a realization that I really liked the digital marketing aspect more than the development. But still, having that background has been very helpful the last number of years, as there seems to be somewhat of a disconnect with a lot of marketers on the technical know-how. So that's always been a benefit, I think.
No, absolutely. I understand and I totally feel you. I, am an engineer from background, but I lasted in development as a coder just for 8 months, before
Yeah,
I realized that. But the knowledge definitely helps,
right.
in marketing. So I completely feel you.
Mhm.
Adam, also, you are a part of an amazing orphanage, MOWCF, which
Right,
provides opportunities to Liberian orphans, widows, and children. Tell
correct.
us more about the orphanage.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's been about 3 or 4 years ago, my wife and I and a small team here locally, um, through a strange series of circumstances, got in contact with an individual over in Liberia. And he expressed his need and I guess interest in eventually starting an orphanage. And at the time, I was, the thought came to me, well, I don't know a lot about starting an orphanage, didn't really know how to start a nonprofit at the time, but I did know how to do marketing. So I said, well, the least I can do is put a website up and do some marketing. And that's really how it started. I had the one talent as far as marketing and promotion. And that really eventually over the years bloomed into a non-government organization over in Liberia. We have a 501c3 here in the States, and we've been supporting. Right now, we have four orphans under our care. We just completed the construction of a building. So until
Uh-huh.
this point, we'd been essentially renting the safe house facility. So we've just completed that, and hopefully that will open up opportunities to take in more kids in the future. So
Oh,
that's a little
absolutely.
pet project of mine.
Well done for that, and best of luck.
Thanks. Yeah, much appreciated.
So let's dive into marketing now. So the first question I would ask would be, how does your SEO process look like?
Yeah, so often we're going to start out with clients trying to understand essentially what their needs are. That seems to be the very first point, understanding what their expectations are, what their real objectives are, because surprisingly, many clients have different goals and objectives. You would think that most clients want solely just leads, and that's often the case, but it's not always the case. Some clients are really more interested in larger exposure. Maybe their KPIs are phone calls over traffic or vice versa. So we try to understand what their big picture objectives are. And once we've kind of defined that, understood the business a little bit more, typically the first step is going to be an in-depth audit, some competitor analysis, understanding kind of the landscape as it relates to their keywords, figuring out what can be done, and also making sure that we have the right strategy. While we really do like SEO and pay-per-click marketing, there are some businesses where you may not want to lead with SEO or PPC, or maybe you want a mixed approach. So also understanding what strategy or combination of strategies are going to be most advantageous to the client is going to be important. So um, once we're done with the audit and the competitive analysis, the keyword research, then we typically have a kind of a baseline offering that we offer, and this varies. It has some flexibility depending on the client, their scope, how quickly they really want to see results, and it's kind of a three-tiered. So we're going to be looking at link building, link acquisition. Often we'll do, depending on the business, we might do a set of local citations, maybe some directory submissions, and then we do a lot of also link acquisitions through, third-party, blog partners or affiliate sites. The second part of our package or offering is going to be the on-page technical SEO. So making sure that, page structure is intact and healthy, making sure that metadata is filled out appropriately and well researched, all of those kind of things, And then the last piece is content supplication. So often we'll create a content supplication strategy. Sometimes this will come in the form of supplemental blog posts for the client. Other times it might be, monthly page content or product descriptions. It really depends, but we like to supplement content where we can, because we know that also is a piece that moves the needle, expanding that page count.
Right. You also play with a lot of tools.
Yeah.
What are your go-to tools that you always carry in your SEO kit bag?
Yeah, it depends on what we're doing. For audits, I really like Screaming Frog. That's probably the tool I've had in my toolbox the longest. And so often we have essentially a customized audit template. As with much of our processes, we have customized templates that we pull data into. But I would say majority of our audits come out of Screaming Frog, but we do pull elements out of SEMrush as well. As far as day-to-day tools, I would say probably our go-to is SEMrush for reporting, day-to-day analysis. And then for keyword research, I would say probably my favorite right now is Ahrefs. So I really like Ahrefs for keyword research. It kind of is my go-to whenever we're doing that side of things.
I love it for the backlinking as well.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a lot of crossover between SEMrush and Ahrefs, but it's funny, you kind of, at least I find myself getting used to different aspects of each tool just because I don't either want to learn it from the other tool, or maybe I like the user interface on one tool versus the other. So I find I pick and choose different aspects depending on what I'm doing and my comfortability with the user interface. And then the other tool I haven't mentioned is Page Optimizer Pro. So we've been using that for a lot of the content optimization side of things.
Right.
So we use that quite a bit as well.
So Adam, when you're planning your on-page and the content audit, right? You said that you would also have a look at the competitors,
Right.
see what they're doing. But when it comes to planning the content of the page, how do you decide what content will go on the page, what elements to include? Will you compare, let's say, for that particular keyword, the top 10 pages, and then plan the content? How would you plan the content of that page?
So typically what we'll do is in our kind of setup phase, we'll do our initial keyword research. We'll often identify a set of terms that are going to really match for each of the primary pages on the website. So we let a lot of that keyword research and competitive analysis drive the strategy. So at least we know the focal points. And then once we actually get going with our monthly cadence, that's where we then build out the content based on that topical focus. So it would start with the keyword research, often with Ahrefs, and then basically build almost like a sitemap, but a sitemap keyed to keywords and strategies. So we'll have a primary and then some LSI or synonym related terms. And then we'll kind of use that as the baseline. And then each month, depending on our cadence, we'll start building content around that. So we know kind of where we're at in our roadmap. And that's where things like Page Optimizer Pro comes into play. Obviously, we can write a piece of content, knowing what the keywords are, being able to pull the competitors that are already ranking for those terms. But that tool allows us to kind of analyze the content that we create, making sure that once we either add it or update it to the site in question, we're going to have a better chance of ranking for the desired terms.
Absolutely, absolutely. Adam, tell us about your search engine spider simulator tool and what does it do?
Yeah. So we have a couple different tools that we've created, and that's one of them. None of the tools are, I would say, groundbreaking, but they're a lot of the tools that we found ourselves using, and some of them we've built based off of existing kind of micro tools in the market, but maybe added our own little spin to it. So the search engine spider simulator, what it essentially does, I would say what doesn't exactly simulate a search spider. But what it does is it pulls out and it lets you analyze a website purely from the textual content aspect. And this is one thing that, a lot of clients misunderstand is they can have a really, beautiful looking site, a lot of nice aesthetics, but the search engines really kind of ignore a lot of that. Of course, you have things like alt tags that will tell you what an image is, but if you have a page that is, maybe aesthetically pleasing, but it has very little copy, that's less context for the search engines to use when determining how to rank a page. So we built this tool really as an exercise, not only for our team, but also for our clients to say, look, this is exactly what the search engines see. They see all these words. They really don't see much of the imagery. And it helps us to communicate to them, why we may recommend expanding page copy or why we may recommend building out a different page layout. So that's the primary focus with that tool, is it really helps us hone in on that type of conversation.
Right, right. Coming to the link building side of SEO, once you
Mhm.
have, the right structure, the right content in place, how do you plan the link building?
Yeah, so the link building is, I guess, similar into, in our initial setup. A lot of what we'll look at is, as far as link building, is we'll look at the competitive landscape. We'll try to figure out who are the competitors that we hope to compete with. Often we'll look at and analyze their kind of backlinking scenario and figure out how we can replicate that. And that's the biggest thing with the search engines. Even though the the algorithms change constantly, the one thing that is always going to be there is the ability to, analyze what's there, whether it's pages that are ranking, um, figuring out, across your top 10 competitors, what the average word count is, what the average keyword usage is, what the average number of links or anchor specific links are. So we look a lot at the competition to help plan that out, making sure that if we're building links that have, say, anchor, keyword anchor tags in them, that we're not overdoing it, making sure that the ratios are similar to other sites that we're competing against. So really, it's a lot of competitor analysis. And then also just starting to run the link building programs and analyzing them from there. Most of what we build in so that we can make changes if needed. So often we'll control a lot of the link properties, or at least the ability to remove or change those later on. It's obviously not always the case, but that's kind of the crux of it.
Right, right. What is your take on, link building or, getting links from very low DA sites? Because a lot of outreach companies out there, they're starting packages, when they define them, they define them from DA10, DA20. What is your take on those DA links?
It's funny you should ask, because we had a client ask us about this, because one of the metrics that we do add in our link building is kind of that domain authority score. Um, Really only to give clients that are not in the SEO industry at least some baseline. But we have a multi-tier link package. So some of the links are higher value, and we obviously do less of those because there's more work to set up. And then there's those that are lower value, at least as far as what we're being reimbursed for from a client side. So a situation came up where we had some, say, directory or social bookmarking sites that had a higher domain authority than the premium links that we're offering. And the client asked, a relevant question. Well, why are these considered premium links when they have lesser domain authority? And so we had to kind of backtrack a little bit and explain that domain authority is really just one metric, and it's not even technically a metric that Google uses. It can be kind of a rough idea to give you one data point, but what we look at when we're looking at links is not just domain authority. There's been opportunities for us to garner links that have high domain authority, but when we go and look at their traffic, we see that their traffic is either minimal or it's quickly declining. And so that would be a site, despite the domain authority, we would just say, no, it's probably not worth getting a link from. So we look at traffic as one of the factors as to whether we want a particular link. We do look at domain authority. We look at sometimes social signals. Sometimes we'll even look at the branding of the website to figure out, like, okay, is this a site that somebody threw up and it's just a PBN or a link wheel type site, or is this an actively managed property that that actually has some work put into it? So we take all those things into consideration as quality, because there's a good chance that Google's also looking at a lot of these factors, not just a central score such as domain authority.
No, absolutely. I think, more manual investment of time is needed when you're planning links, because, not only the metrics, it's still easy to analyze all metrics like traffic, keywords, CF, TF, DA. But then again, those are just metrics. You need to actually have a look at the site, see whether actually your client, would want to be associated with that site, and what does it cater to. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for any of those, any of those partnerships that we look, we tap into, we do actually study everything, even up to the design of the website. So that goes into play as well. So.
Absolutely. Adam, how do you implement CRO while doing SEO?
Yeah, so there's a couple different tactics that we like to implement. One, there's various heat map tools. Google has a plugin that ties into Google Analytics that's really helpful, that helps us kind of see some heat mapping. We've used tools like Hotjar, Attention Wizard, and others. And so those can be really beneficial to help analyze, conversion rate optimization. We also do a lot of kind of click-through rate auditing. So one of the tools that we use for this is primarily Google Search Console. And from there, what we'll do is we'll pull a report of the terms that our website is being fetched for. So essentially, the impressions our website is getting, and we can look at pages or terms that get a high impression count but very low click-through rate. And usually that's an identifier that, hey, there's an opportunity here that's being missed. People are seeing the website come up in the SERPs, but for some reason they're not clicking through. So while that's not necessarily, I guess it is the very first part of the conversion rate is getting people to the website. So we start there really with that click-through rate optimization, and then from there really work on the page analysis to really analyze where people are going. Google Analytics has some good visual data as far as their flow data as well, which helps analyze where people are going once they hit a primary landing page. So those are really all different combinations of elements and aspects we use for CRO, but they can vary depending on the client, the type of site, whether it's an e-commerce site or just a standard service practice. So a lot of that goes into play and is very specific to the scenario.
Right. Adam, how do you plan, structure, and promote your blog for traffic?
Our own personal blog
or
clients?
Clients.
Okay. I guess some of that would go back to the same way. So with a lot of the clients that we're working with, if we're building out blog posts for them, usually what we like to do is use every arsenal that we have. So everything from social media promotion, making sure that we're taking a blog post, maybe refactoring it for, say, a social platform. So if it's a Twitter post or Twitter platform, we might take a snippet from a blog and put it on that platform. There's a lot of, depending on which industry you're in, there's a lot of other kind of third-party aggregators. For example, whenever we do a blog for our own personal brand, we'll leverage like sites like Growth Hackers and others, where we can syndicate that post, across another channel and get referral content back to it. The biggest thing that we like to do with any content that we're creating, whether it's us or clients, is to try to repurpose the content as much as possible. So, for instance, we just got done doing a webinar for SE ranking, and they, of course, put this out into a video platform. They promote it on their channel. We, of course, promote it on our channel, but then we wrote a press release and we're pushing that out. We've taken portions of that and turned them into small snippets for Instagram and Twitter. And so our process is trying to keep any kind of content as alive as possible for as long as possible. So the more we can refactor that content and distribute it across multiple channels, the longer it's gonna be out there. We do also like to use social signals, as well as, of course, backlinks to boost blog posts. So that seems to be one of the things that is helpful, even though social signals is still kind of a debated aspect as whether or not it relates to traffic. We seem to see an impact, and we've done a couple studies where we see, at least in the short term, it tends to give content a boost. How long that sticks if you stop those signals is a little bit, seems like it does degrade over time, but we can get stuff boosted fairly quickly, at least from our test, by implementing some social signals into post.
Right. Also, trying to rank for rich answers has a lot of value. How would you strategize for it?
Yeah, it's a broad topic. It kind of depends. I mean, the quick and easy answer is make sure that you have schema markup on your page. I mean, there's most people that are not in the digital marketing space, I would say, not even in this, like outside of the SEO space specifically, don't even understand that schema markup, and rich snippets is a thing. Now they've seen them on Google and stuff. They've seen rich snippets for recipes and, the movie times and all that stuff. But if you ask the average person, even maybe a marketer that's not specifically in SEO, how that comes to be, most of them don't even know. So honestly, most customers, benefit just by implementing that into their website. Luckily, content management systems like WordPress and others are starting to implement some fairly easy tools that do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Although even with those tools, sometimes they fall short of how much you can pull out. So we will implement a lot of the kind of done for you plugins in some cases, but in some cases we'll actually go through the work to actually manually add schema to websites, because we'll get a little bit more extra input from it. And then, of course, sometimes you just get it naturally, whether it's for your brand or a blog post, creating content that's really readable, relevant, making sure that you are answering the query quickly at the beginning. That's going to help. So whenever we create content, we have a particular structure that we look at. Often we like to tell people right from the beginning what we're going to tell them, preferably in bullet points or some other structure, and then go into the meat and then reiterate it. So even structuring your content in a particular way without implementing specifically schema can sometimes make sure that, make sure that you show up in those verticals when there's not a lot of competition. So.
Right, right. Also, Adam, even though this sounds simple, but a lot of people get this wrong. When you're pushing a new website live, how do
Mhm.
you ensure there's no loss of earlier SEO value?
Yeah, this is a big issue. I was literally on a call with somebody, actually it was yesterday, and they're launching a new website, and she has a web firm that is handling the website, but also claiming to do SEO. And my first question to her was, well, has the agency that you're working with, have they addressed anything as far as URL redirection or any of that stuff? And she said, not really, and that's what I'm concerned about. And I said, well, uh, one of the biggest things I see all the time is people launching a new site, getting really excited about it, and then seeing their traffic just fall to the floor. And it's because a lot of people don't understand that if you switch from, say, one content management system to another, almost inevitably your URL structure is going to change. Even if you're in the same content management system, you're going to probably see some URL structure changes. And so it's really important whenever you're making major updates or relaunching a website that you have somebody on your side that can help you navigate that. I would say that's one of the aspects where the typical client is going to have some challenge, and even developers often don't understand. They may be able to understand the technical side, but understanding the need for it is often lost on most developers until they have kind of a technical SEO person explain why it's important. So a lot of times when in those kinds of scenarios, we'll take an inventory of a URL structure of a whole site before, and then have essentially a redirection map on the back end, making sure that we're properly redirecting all of the URLs to the new landing page. And I'll give you an example. So let's say that you have an about page, and your about page is website.com/about-us. And in the new site, it's website.com/about-us, all one word. Well, there's not only pages that are indexed in the search engines with the legacy URL, but there's things like bookmarks or links. So all of that gets obfuscated whenever you break that link, unless you tell the search engines that, hey, this is the new home. So if you go to the old URL, go ahead and redirect that to the new URL. And so that's a typical process called 301 redirection. That's one of the biggest things we do when it comes to helping clients navigate either new or updated website structure.
Right, right. Also, Adam, for a business with multiple locations, how do you plan location-specific pages while
Mhm.
ensuring you are not creating doorway pages or spammy pages?
It's interesting because there are certain tactics that are out there that are considered doorway pages, and while Google typically frowns on those, and and the reality is there's so many of them still out there, and a lot of them really do still work. And so one, it's understanding uh, the scenario. Obviously, if you have 2 or 3 locations, it's not a lot of work to just create a custom page for that. So that's not really a scenario. If you have a couple locations, you're just essentially making a couple different landing pages with some different verbiage. But there's other clients that we've worked with that wanted representation all across say the domestic US, or maybe across a certain state. And we've run tests where we've essentially used a baseline of content, made changes to it slightly, updating the location, maybe a little bit of verbiage, but 90% of the content is actually redundant or repetitive. And people would be surprised, because if you believe everything you hear from Google, that not only is that a no-no, but it's not effective. But we've seen otherwise. I mean, even some competitors to some of our clients are doing that exact same thing. So you have to ask yourself, as a business operator, as a support to a company, you have to know what the risks are, but you also have to know what the rewards are. And God forbid you ever have a situation where your website gets, say, penalized or gets dinged. The upside is websites are dynamic, and so you can always make changes later on. But yeah, we typically will implement different activities based on the client, but we're not opposed to creating templatized landing pages where there's a lot of territory that needs to be taken advantage of. So.
Right, right. What is the biggest challenge you have come across in your SEO career?
I think the biggest challenge with SEO in general is helping clients understand that SEO is a long-term play. Most businesses have heard of SEO. They generally know what it is, but they don't understand that there's a large maturation period, meaning that what you do today, you may not see an impact for 2-3 months. However, it's compounding. And so the longer you typically stick with it, usually the better results you're going to have. So that's the hardest sell, I think, that we have, is telling clients, hey, you're not going to see results likely for a couple months, but if you stick it through, trust me, you're going to see a benefit. We've been doing a lot of supplemental packages where we're working in pay-per-click marketing with SEO specifically for that purpose. It allows the clients to see some quick results from the pay-per-click side while we get the search engine optimization up and running. I would say probably some of the best case studies that we've had have been those clients that have been with us for the long haul, meaning that they're with us for 1-2 years. Usually after you get to that 12-year mark or the 12-month mark, that's when the light bulb goes on and clients are like, oh my gosh, But getting people to that point sometimes can be challenging because it takes a lot of patience and a lot of trust that the money being invested is not going to waste.
No, right. Also, from my experience, what I've realized is in SEO, like you said, the actual game is to keep the client till the 12 months.
Yeah.
But what I have realized also is, it's the way you're actually selling on day one and
Right.
laying down the expectations. If you're able to actually show that roadmap of 12 months, and explain to the client that, this is what you have to expect and the time you need to invest,
Right.
then he is the ideal client for you.
Right.
This goes back to our earlier discussion where you said, first, I need to sit down with the client and see whether actually, SEO is the solution, PPC is the solution, or do I have to do a mix?
Right. Yeah, we do a lot to set the expectations up front. But the other thing that we do, I think, above and beyond a lot of SEO agencies is we do a pretty extensive reporting. So obviously SEO, always requires reporting. But we find a lot of agencies really are just doing essentially data dumps. They're exporting something out of a tool set, maybe automating it. They're not even looking at it. Every month we put together a custom, handwritten overview of what we're doing, and linked to that is an embedded custom report in Google Data Studio. So every client that we have has a customized report that's pulling data from multiple sources. So it might be pulling data from usually at least Google Analytics and Google Search Console. If they're doing AdWords, we're going to be pulling in data from that. If they're local, we'll be pulling in data from that. Soon here, we're probably going to be starting to pull in social information as well, as we have some partners in that space. So all of our clients, whether they look at the reports or not, and trust me, some of them don't, the ones that do at least get a sense of what's happening and why. There's never a lapse of not knowing what's happening on their account, which I think helps them understand that the money isn't just being, wasted or put into a black hole somewhere.
Right, right. Also, Adam, we all know the situation right now, a lot of clients pausing, a lot of
Hmm.
agencies, from the agency side, I'm talking,
Right,
agencies, getting hit.
right.
What has your experience been during these times? And, how should agencies go about it?
Yeah, so as far as our agency, we've actually seen probably an uptick in clients, which is refreshing because at the beginning of this, I think nobody knew what to expect. I think a lot of businesses are realizing their need to be more online centric. And so, with that, it seems, at least for us, people are starting to open up to the idea of things like SEO and pay per click marketing, um, you know, putting out new website properties. And so, we've seen actually a little bit of pickup in business, although we have seen some clients that have put stuff on pause. So, it's kind of been an even mix in some respects. I would say for many of our clients, having recently pulled, the end of a month reporting, we're seeing about an average 20% dip in traffic for most of our clients. So that can be challenging. I guess our messaging to clients is just to, keep their head up. Also, letting them know we're here to help pivot or make any necessary changes in the short term. So we've been really kind of reactive, helping our clients to react to situations where maybe their existing business model has not necessarily worked with being, confined to one location. And we have a lot of clients in that space. I would say two in particular whose sole business requires people getting together. One does assembly shows for schools all across the U.S. and of course those have been paused. So we're working with them to promote more virtual type training events. We have another client that does team building events. So again, the idea there is that an office or an office space comes together and does an activity that helps them unite as a team. So they also have had to pivot to creating kits that you can purchase and do from your own home or your own office. So that's another area where we've helped them kind of prioritize and pivot, and then kind of also pivoted our own marketing focus, at least in the short term. So really being flexible, I would say, whether you're in marketing or in general business, that's the biggest thing that people have to get used to now, is being flexible, maybe with their own products or services, but as well as their own clientele, making sure that they have an ear to listen, that they're not just trying to push a sale. I think right now is the time to maybe pull back on pushing hard sales and just say, how can I be there for you? Like, is there anything else I can help you with? And you'd be surprised. Some clients are like, well, actually, yeah, I do actually need some help making this change or updating this or that, or maybe they just need an ear to listen to. So
Yeah, and also, I think this is the time to show your true character
right.
to your clients. It's just like, I always believe a good salesman is somebody that, your client can leave you all alone
Mm,
with his house open, right?
right.
So I think this is the time to show your character. Uh, Definitely, building relationships and being there for the clients, and definitely things will work out. Well, Adam, thank you so much. I
Oh, yeah,
wish we had more time. I could hold you longer, but it has been fun. Thank you
absolutely.
so
I
much for
appreciate
your
it.
time, and hopefully we'll talk again.
For sure. I appreciate it. Thanks again.
All right, thank you, man. Take care. Be safe.